I have another fun one today and I'm really excited about it. It's one that you guys have asked for several times. I looked through all kinds of different recipes and I never found anything that really sort of, I thought, fit the bill until the other day. Now I found it, we're gonna try it. Welcome to Grow and Preserve. I'm Carter and I'm so glad you're here with me today. So what are we doing? We're doing Bloody Mary mix or spicy tomato juice. Either way you look at it. David sees it as Bloody Mary mix. The recipe calls it Bloody Mary mix. I look at it and I see a spicy tomato juice. So whatever your pleasure is, it's something I think you're going to enjoy having on the shelf and, you know, a whole lot of fun. We're doing another recipe from this book, America's Test Kitchen Foolproof Preserving. I did a recipe from this last week. I'll paste it up here. It is roasted salsa and lime, roasted tomato salsa and lime. Fantastic. I mean, it's really, really good. So if you haven't seen that one, be sure to go take a look. So this is the book we're using. I don't know that I'd go buy it yet. You know, I mean, I've only tested one recipe out of it so far. So we'll see, but we're gonna test this one together and I'm really excited. So it's tomato season. Obviously, things are going kind of crazy. So today I'm gonna use a lot of my slicing tomatoes because what I really want is a juice, right? I mean, that's what I want. I want the juice. I don't necessarily need to use my paste tomatoes that are kind of low juice, low seeds, whatever. So we're gonna start with this and turn it into something wonderful, I hope. So let's get started. My microphone is still picking up a lot of background noise and some echo here in the kitchen while I'm cooking. So I'm gonna switch over to voiceover so that you don't miss anything and I don't drive you crazy with the horrible sound quality. I will have this fixed for the next video. All right, let's get started on this recipe. Now, when I do a recipe for the first time, generally speaking, I try to follow the directions exactly, as painful as they may be sometimes. So I did that in this case, and I started out with fresh tomatoes, and I set about peeling them, and then they want them cored and cut into 1.5 inch chunks. So that is what I'm doing. So I have 9 pounds of tomatoes here. And as I said, I have mostly slicers here because I want them to be juicy tomatoes, right? Because that's what I'm going for, the juice. So in order to peel them, you cut a slit in the bottom and you dunk them in some boiling water, you know, maybe 30 to 60 seconds, depending on your tomatoes and how thick their skins are. And then pull them out and put them straight into a bowl of ice water. And then the skin will loosen and you can peel it. If you're like me, you'll make quite a bit of mess along the way, but it will eventually get done. So next time I do this recipe, and I'm recording this voiceover after I finished, and so I will tell you that there will most likely be a next time. David was really pleased with this one and the idea of having it on the shelf. So next time I would have put my tomatoes in the freezer at least the night before. And so when I put tomatoes in the freezer, I go ahead and I core them, pop them in the freezer, and then actually maybe a couple nights beforehand, because you want to leave, I tend to leave mine overnight to defrost in the sink and just leave them in their bags, and you know, by morning they're pretty well defrosted. You can just run a little bit of warm water over them for the ones that aren't quite defrosted. But when you do that, that skin slips off. You've already cored them. So all you're doing from there is cutting them into reasonable chunks to stick in a blender. So all of this that I'm doing now, you know, from the dunking them in the water and peeling, and that's quite a time-consuming process, requires a couple different bowls. Then this one here, where you have these little slippery tomatoes rolling around in your hands while you're trying to cut out the core, all of that becomes unnecessary because you've done it with good solid skin on tomatoes before you stuck them in the freezer, and then those skins just slip right off and straight into the blender. Well, oh, how much easier that would be. So that is how I will do this next time. But I did want to go through the directions as written, not only so I can see exactly what it is they want accomplished, but so that you can see how to do it if you want to do it exactly as written. No issues there. So into the blender, that was super fast, super easy, I really kind of got a kick out of using the red, or actually most of my tomatoes are more pink than red, but that reddish color and the yellow, I think it made it a really pretty color. So you could do yours all yellow, you can do it all pink, you can do it all red, all purple. I don't know. Maybe that might be a really nice flavor. Purple tomatoes tend to be a little more smoky, so you might enjoy that. But anyway, you can skip through the most time-consuming part just by taking a quick shortcut. To me, to my taste, it does not affect the taste of the tomatoes because we're going to cook these for quite some time anyway, and then we're going to process them. So I'm not worried about a frozen defrosted tomato no longer tasting like a fresh tomato, because it will be a cooked tomato by the time we put it in this jar anyway. So that's my thought on that. So we're going to wrap this up and move on to adding all those seasonings. Now I'm going to put it on the stove. My pot here is, I think, 6 quarts, and they want you to get down to, I think, two quarts is what we're trying to get down to. This recipe makes supposedly 4 pints. I did 1.5 pints, and I had a couple of extra half pints here. But so I had about 5 quarts going in, and I've boiled it down. You can see it's probably boiled down by half, maybe 2.5 quarts. There is what I have. I'm going to add the seasonings now. So we started with the 9 pounds of tomatoes. We're going to add 2/3 of a cup of bottled lemon juice, plus any extra that we want for seasoning. I found that to be plenty. 2.5 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce. Again, you're going to do this to your taste. The quantity of Worcestershire and horseradish, salt, pepper, hot sauce, all of that is going to be strictly to your taste. So their suggestions are 2.5 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce, 2 tablespoons of prepared horseradish, plus any extra you want for seasoning, salt and pepper, and 1 teaspoon of hot sauce. So as you'll see, I ended up wanting more Worcestershire sauce and a little more horseradish sauce. Salt and pepper was fine, and I did not need any more than 1 teaspoon of hot sauce. And I thought that the flavor on this was really nice. It's exactly what I want in a very spicy tomato mix, really. I don't really drink Bloody Marys, but it's kind of like there's like a Mr. and Mrs. T's spicy. It's kind of that level of spice and that level of, tang from the Worcestershire and the horseradish for me. So do more or less, it's up to you. Do at least use the 2/3 cup of bottled lemon juice, though, to make sure that it is acidic enough. And we're going to do a pH test here in a minute because I haven't done this recipe before. So I want to make sure, not knowing terribly much about this book, other than that they say they've tested and it is good to be canned, I wanted to kind of double check for myself, right? So we're going to do a pH test, and I will show you as we do that. But you can see the texture on this, the consistency of this juice is really good. I mean, really good. And cooking it down to about half was terrific. And you'll see in the end product that I don't have any separation in these. You know how tomato products will often separate, once they get processed and you're sitting in the jar and you've got a whole lot of float going on. These didn't separate at all. This was really a terrific consistency, and I was real pleased with it. All right, so now that I have the taste exactly where I want it, so this is the product I want to can. We're going to test the pH. So it's important to not pre-test and then start adding all kinds of other things, but just go ahead and get it exactly the way you want it, and then test. And then if you need to make some adjustments for pH, we can do that afterward. But so this is the little test that I use. I use it for all my ferments. I use it for my kombucha. I use it for anything I can that doesn't come out of the Ball book or one of the extension services or USDA or whatever, where, I know that they've done their own pH test and I don't have to worry about it. So what I'm looking for in a pH is anything below 4.6 is safe to be water bath canned. So I want to make sure, because I'm not in a lab, I'm doing this at home, I'm doing this with a product that I can, you know, just kind of buy over the counter. It's not some super duper electronic calibrated anything. I want to make sure that I have a pretty good margin of error with this. So this particular test just includes the low end of the pH scale. And as you can see, this turns out to be about a pH of 3.0. So if 4.6 is my max, I'm in pretty good shape there with a 3.0. So I feel very comfortable canning this. You can see it's pretty easy to compare the colors of these, you know, little strips when you're doing the test. I find this one super easy to use, and I'll put a link to it down below if you want your own test, which I would recommend. So, you know, whether it's for a ferment or a canning recipe or kombucha or, you know, the water that you're giving your garden kind of things, to me having a pH test is always a good thing. Okay, so my jars are ready. I'm going to pull them out of the canner. And I am using half-pint jars because, you know, one of these is, you know, pretty much a full glass of spicy tomato juice, and certainly, you know, one Bloody Mary may be all David needs at a time. So I'm going to do half pints, and this is a size that works out well for us, but the recipe is written as pints. So we're going to put these in and do a 1/2 inch of headspace. And get my lids on, get them in. So I'm going to use a regular water bath canner this time. Actually, it's a stock pot, but I'm not using my steam canner because these need to process for 40 minutes. And that's too long for me to be comfortable that my steam canner will have enough water in it to not run out and scorch at the bottom. So 40 minutes is how we're going to process these. Seems like a long time, but you know, I got to tell you, it works like a charm. I had just a little bit left. I ended up with 10 half pints, which is fantastic. So again, if you are above 1,000 feet and your altitude, be sure to check the chart down below, and that'll tell you how much time you need to add to the processing. All right, it's the next morning. It got a little late when I was taking these out last night, and David was already settled in watching the news over there. So I thought I'd come back this morning and tell you how they turned out. I think they did great. I have no separation or anything like you often do in tomato products. So I was really quite pleased with what I got. I also had a little bit left in the pan last night, so I shared that with David, and we both really liked the taste of this one. So he's excited to have it on the shelf. I'm excited to have it on the shelf. And it is my second winner of a recipe from this book. But do keep in mind, as I mentioned before, it's only the second recipe I've done from this book. So don't go thinking it's a fantastic canning book yet, because right now I'm not even sure it really qualifies as a preserving book, because most of the recipes, as I mentioned, are not real preservation. It's just for things you can keep in the refrigerator for a couple or 3 weeks or something like that. So I'm going to keep going. As you can see, I have lots of different recipes in here that I want to try, and I hope we're going to find a lot more. I'm very optimistic. You know, we're 2 for 2 on this one, so we will see. I will put the link to the roasted tomato lime salsa up here if you haven't seen that one. That one was an absolute winner. I'm really excited about that, and I'll definitely be making at least one more round of that one. So that's what I have for you today. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful week. If you like this video, please like it, subscribe, share, all that kind of good stuff. And I will see you next week. Bye-bye.